Listen to the lyrics. Here we go. What happened to Billy?
When I was in the 3rd grade, my art teacher one day gave us a very intriguing assignment. Paint an emotion, she told us. We just had to pick any emotion and render it in paint. So I set to work, head down, focused immediately on my art. I was a very serious 3rd grader, very anxious, very worried. Not that I'm not anxious and worried now, but I mean back then I was, headed for a stroke before middle school. There was a course correction later on. But anyway, art class flies by. It was, whatever it was, 45 minutes a week back then. It's crazy to think that amount of time ever registered, as much as it often did. To a kid, 45 minutes is a chunk of time. Things can be accomplished. In 45 minutes now, Christy and I are lucky if we can watch 20 minutes of a TV show. I just blinked and 45 minutes passed. So, okay, at the end of art class, I lean back and I survey my masterpiece. It's a painting of a boy, who looked very much like me, walking alone in the rain. And he's got an umbrella, but it's not doing much good. He's soaked, and he's got a long way to go. The girl next to me looks at my painting and she goes, "That's not an emotion." I say, "This is sadness." But I look at everybody else's paintings, and they're these flowy, abstract pieces. They all look like screensavers or dorm posters. The girl next to me, hers is this molten lava-looking blur of bright colors. It's happiness, she tells the art teacher. And the art teacher praises her work, and then she looks at mine and tells me, "You were supposed to paint an emotion." I was humiliated. And, maybe I didn't hear part of the instructions, and maybe I deserved to be laughed at by my classmates, but I remember feeling, for the first time in my life, the first of many times, but maybe never so powerful as this time, artistic indignation. Because even as a 3rd grader, I knew. You can't fucking tell me I painted emotions wrong. Okay, so the beginning of the episode goes story about art class.
If I talk really loud. No, this is fine.
Intro. Description of going to PMAC.
Well, this is okay.
Into me introducing Michael at
How
PMAC.
about this way?
Into the beginning of
Hey,
Michael
pretty good.
interview. Okay. On December 10th, 2016, I went down to the Portsmouth Music and Arts Center, or PMAC, which is a nonprofit community music and arts school. I met with the executive director, Russ Grazier, who in turn introduced me to Matt Langley, who was teaching the teen jazz ensemble that morning.
You're ready for an ad.
I stood by the door as the students filed in and warmed up. I tried to stay out of the way. And nobody asked what I was doing there until they were about to start their first number.
What's that? What, Zach? Why are you
Yeah. So, well, I do a podcast, and I was here recently talking with, listening to this artist, Michael Stasiuk, and while he was giving the talk, somebody, I don't know who it was, might have been you guys, was rehearsing. It sounded really good, but I really liked the sound of the music kind of coming into the room during the conversation. So, for the podcast, we're sort of recreating that, so we're recording some sound around PMAC, and so I wanted to record you guys today.
What happens if we're really bad?
We'll just select, like when I talk to people, too, I'll just select the parts that make you sound really good. Just the way I only select the parts that make people sound really smart. It's very selectively edited.
Well, I have different kinds of starting points, and it's something that keeps changing. It all kind of started out, picking up something and saying, hey, this looks like a bird, or hey, this looks like a face. So it started that way, and the kinds of things I was making, I was just sort of slapping them together with wire and nails or whatever, and they were sort of like scarecrows in the backyard. One of the questions that I continue to chew on is looking at art. Some art is raw in its how it's put together and the feeling of it, and some of it is and sometimes art is about a certain kind of craftsmanship that's very, about clean and well made. And I'm interested in both. I'm interested in, I think, in well made, but also with simple technology. As far as how things are joined, I drill holes and I put in wooden pegs and I glue things. And most of my time is spent just thinking about what I want to do or playing with subtle angles on how things become gestures and suggest a story. So anyway, that's kind of how it evolves. But I guess your question was about how I start.
On December 21st, 2016, Christy and I visited the artist Michael Stasiuk at his home studio. Michael works with found objects and creates sculptures, marionettes, other pieces. His work has this vintage feel by virtue of his materials, but they're also playful and comical, and his human figures feel strangely familiar, like something out of a stop-motion film you saw as a kid but can't remember the name of, but that also seems too good to be true. Like what you're actually remembering is your own imagination, and it was more powerful than you knew. We sat down at a table surrounded by both finished and unfinished pieces, and we talked about them.
Well, what you're looking at right now, the boxes on the wall, those I make by building a box and then figuring out who lives there. So they came later. I started with freestanding figures, and I play with sizes. I play with multiples. What does 2 look like? What does it look like if they're 3? What does it look like if they're 9? Is the group of 9 about difference? Is it about sameness? Is it about configurations that tell some sort of story? But having all those boxes empty gives me a color palette, and it gives me possible stories that have started, because sometimes they have words. Like right now we're looking at some that one has vintage linoleum, a couple of them have the beginnings of vintage. They were the beginnings of quilts that never got made, so they're vintage quilt patches.
Gifts men like over
Gifts
there.
men like.
Poker chips. That's one of the
Yeah,
suggestions.
It's a 1950s advertisement that looks like Christmas ideas. Yeah, what is it? Poker chips and...
Pen and pencil sets. That one's at least true.
Sure. Yeah, there's a haircut and shave one there, which is 55 cents. The shave is 20 cents, and the tonic application is 10 cents.
That's where they get you with a tonic application.
Yeah.
Every single time. It's like the seal coating they want to put on your car.
So for his talk at PMAC, Michael had started with slides of old toys, like Mr. Potato Head, the weird old kinds, before they got standardized and made less scary. He also showed old Halloween costumes, masks he'd made out of paper mache. He talked about going to art school, getting lost, wondering what to do, struggling with being like an angsty painter, and then slowly finding his way back to the work that was more like his childhood. Playful. Tactile, and, kind of funny.
The idea that humor could be part of art, believe it or not, was not part of my thinking. And the point at which I realized that I was more serious when I was fooling around was that was a big deal. And it was pointed out to me in a teaching situation where it was a feeling of needing to be caught, and someone finally caught me. She was a teacher at Haystack Mountain School of Crafts up in Deer Isle, and I was in a 3-week clay class where I went back to my angst mode that I was in for 4 years of art school. And she watched me going through my angst thing and tried to sort of figure out what was going on with me. And she caught me fooling around mixing clay one day, because that was back when you had to mix powder with water, and I had this big 300 pile of mushy clay. and I made a big monster head, and she came out and caught me doing it, and she said, "How come you're not doing that in there?" Meaning the studio. And there I was, caught. And it was the beginning of a conversation of, there's also a history of humor and playfulness in art, and maybe that's what you need to be connecting with, and having that be sort of the seed that could grow. And so that's kind of how it went.
So I'm currently headed over to PMAC again to talk to Russ Grazier, the executive director, for a little bit. And if you want to get into my process, that conversation with Michael happened in December. It is now February 16th, 2017. I'm almost done with this episode. And I also have like 7 more in various stages of construction and development. Most of them aren't even close to being done. But, you know, sometimes I wonder if this is the right way to work. And my overloaded and confused computer definitely questions my methods.
So PMAC is an acronym for Portsmouth Music and Arts Center, which is a community music and visual arts school. It's modeled after a lot of community music schools or community visual arts schools that you might see throughout the country, except that we put both the visual arts and the music under one roof, which is less common. It does happen in different places, but it's a little bit less common. And the idea of a community arts school is that it's a place outside of a traditional school environment, whether, you know, a degree granting program, whether a public school or a college, where you can get a fairly deep level of instruction without it being connected necessarily to a degree. Mm-hmm. And so we provide music and visual arts classes, one-on-one individual instruction, ensembles that are open to the community, and depending on the type of ensemble or class that it is, there may or may not be prerequisites in order to get into it, you know, a certain level of playing ability or experience in what you're doing. So there's a lot of what we do that's open to pretty much anyone in the community. All they have to do is have the desire to want to do it. And then there are some things that are specialized that you have to have a foundation before you're able to get into the class. For example, a advanced jazz ensemble that does a lot of improvisation. You don't want to walk into that not knowing how to play a saxophone or a trumpet or a piano. You have to learn how to do that first.
What are some ways that people in this community, or just, you know, whatever, listening in Europe, could support something like PMAC, or could support PMAC specifically?
Well, you know, the biggest thing is for people to get involved. If they have a desire to learn something new or continue to learn something that they're working on, whether it's an instrument or an art form, you know, enrolling and participating in programs is one of the best possible ways you can support an organization in your community that provides these types of programs. We also have opportunities for audiences, so whether it's showing up for an art gallery exhibit, when we have a reception for an artist, or an artist lecture like we do with the Weston Master Series, or coming out to a concert and hearing either student or faculty musicians or guest musicians perform is a great way to come and experience the art or music without actually creating the art or music yourself. And then there are people who have a strong belief that programs like these need to be accessible within the community, and they provide donor support to make sure that we're able to give scholarships to families in need and make sure that these programs stay accessible to everyone in the community, regardless of their economic situation.
So PMAC moved to this building, like, what was it? How many years ago?
All right, so you ready for the coincidence of this? Today is the 3-year anniversary of opening this building.
Wow.
So it's 3 years today. We moved in February of 2014, and it took us a long time from when we decided we wanted a permanent building to when we actually moved in. I believe we started the process in 2006. And it took us 8 years from the idea of having a permanent home for PMAC to the realization of it. We had rented for 10 years before we came into this building in another building that wasn't really designed for our use. And during our time in that building, we looked at lots of projects, did lots of designs, but finally settled on this one, and we were able to secure the money through donors to completely renovate the building specifically for our use, and purchase the building. So now we own the building, and it's been a great home for 3 years, and hopefully for many, many more years.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of different, I know the lecture series that Michael was a part of
Yes.
is this is sort of a newer thing.
Yeah, so we're always trying new things, and the West End Master Series is one of our new initiatives this year. And Michael Stasiuk was our second, I believe, speaker on the series. We've had 3 now, and we have 2 more coming up this year, so we'll do 5 this year. We started with Jay Shadler, and then Michael Stasiuk, and then we recently had David Murray, the photographer, in. And next month we have Carly Glavinsky. She recently won the Artist Advancement Grant from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, which is a really prestigious award in this area for an artist. And then in June we'll finish the year with Jordan Wolfson, who is a painter from Colorado, who just happens to be in the area for a few days teaching some workshops, and we were able to secure him to come over and do a talk about his work. So this is something we tried for the first time this year, and it's been so successful. Jumpin' Jay's Fish Cafe sponsored it, so it's free for everyone who comes, which is really important so that anyone can come to this, walk into the building, sit down, and experience a 1-hour lecture with an artist about their work. And they don't have to pay, they just get to come and experience it. We have nice receptions afterwards, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think outside of when I was in college, I think that was the last time that I had opportunities like that. And the Michael one, it was like uniquely effortless to just kind of like walk into a room and sit down.
Exactly. It should feel like when you were in college where your professor or your department sent you an email and said, this is happening, come down, and you just walk into the building, go into the classroom, sit down at your seat, and experience the lecture. And that's what we wanted for the community. And actually, it's funny you say that, because that's what we were thinking of when we put this together. It's not, the artists really gear the talks towards the layperson. It's not like a art school talk where you really have to have a lot of background or understanding or foundation in order to understand what's going on. But at the same time, they do go into a fair amount of detail about what they do and present it in a way where every time I've been to one so far, I've learned something new, and that's exciting for me.
Yeah.
How often do you work? What's like a normal work day like? And if you're working on one item at a time, so it seems like you don't have too much of a problem with staying focused, which I think a lot of people do. But what does a work day look like for you?
Well, there's focusing, and then there's multitasking.
Yeah.
I teach part-time. I make the art that I make in my studio. I do residencies sometimes that are theater arts, and that kind of work is paper mache and a bag of tricks that is all out of cardboard. And so, my work habits sometimes are about schedule. A deadline is certainly a good thing, because I can procrastinate like anybody else. And but I think part of why a deadline is good is because you can't say everything with every single piece that you make, and just accepting that when you call something done, it's the best you can do in a given moment in time. That's it's sort of a more, possibly more mature way of looking at all of that procrastinating stuff, just getting there, getting it done, and going, this is what it is now, and on to the next one.
You say, you teach part-time. Do you enjoy teaching? Do you feel like it helps inform your art? There is obviously a playfulness to a lot of your work. So does, getting to teach younger people art help that, or is it does it drain off some of that energy?
It can do both. I've been doing it a long time. I'm Mr. Stasiuk at the new Durham Elementary School and have been now for 29 years. And as you get older, I would say the opportunity to hang out with kids becomes more precious just because they're fun. And I like the sense of discovery and joy that people that age have. College students, I don't know if their issues are as interesting to me. I mean, I can do art speak, but I really, technology and installation art and all of these things of our generation right now are not so interesting to me. If something's interesting, it's interesting to me, but it's not something that I'm looking to incorporate. I'm pretty happy in my folk art sort of genre. If I were to expand my idea of what I could do, I'd probably be looking at old masters like someone like Calder, where if I was trying to hit a higher note, I would be interested in starting a dialogue with a foundry and trying to make, maybe what I do, think of it as a model and make larger work that is fabricated and more permanent and could live outdoors. It's kind of a grant idea I've chewed on for a while, but I don't think grant writing is very, it's sort of like technology. It's not one of those things that I'm, I don't know. I could be ready to do that.
So if your frame of reference is closer to mine than Michael's, you're probably wondering if he's talking about Catherine Calder, the accordion player for the New Pornographers. He's not. Alexander Calder was an American sculptor who originated the mobile, as in like the thing that hangs down with all the different pieces from art museum ceilings and also over most babies' cribs. He also worked in very large format sculptures. His grandfather, Alexander Milne Calder, which is a name that makes me feel like I have a stuffy nose, is also a sculptor, and he's best known for the statue of William Penn on top of Philadelphia's City Hall, which is a fact that would make a great transition into our interview with our friend Yaara if I hadn't already written a different one earlier. In 1902, Calder posed nude for his father's sculpture, The Man Cub, which is now located at the Met in New York City and is also the kind of fact that I would probably prefer was left off of my Wikipedia entry.
Are there people that, I feel like a lot of artists at different times in their life find someone who handles some of the administrative stuff for them? Like, do you have anybody who has been particularly helpful in getting grant money or putting you in front of other people, or do you have to do it all yourself?
I really like having a gallery relationship. I've been with the George Marshall Store Gallery in York, Maine for, I think it must be 20 years, maybe it's 19, but Mary Harding, who directs that gallery, and I are a pretty good fit as far as, the gallery is an historic building that belongs to the York Historical Society, so all that old stuff that I work with looks good there. I don't know, I like the opportunity to be given an empty room and have to put 20 things in it and have wine and cheese and people tell me that I'm great. And, it's kind of, it makes you feel good and it gives you a deadline and it makes you also mark time with here's a body of work and, how am I going to mark time the next time? Will there be a different sort of angle on the next body of work, or it breaks it up into chapters and if what I do gets placed next to like oil paintings, that makes me look good too. That if you live in the world of whimsical, it helps to have the context of what you do be alongside fine art.
I was gonna say, has there ever been anything that you've created that once you decided that it was done, you were like, well, I can't really part with this because he's too special, or anything like that?
There are certain ones that, if they go out into the world and come back a few times, I sort of bang the gavel and say I own that one. I mean, like that magician up there on the top with the orange cape. I kind of feel like I own that one. I mean, it's not my favorite thing I ever did, but I just sort of, I liked him. I was glad that he came home, and he kind of lives here.
Is there a favorite thing that you've done?
I made a lobster marionette once, and that was back when I was sort of using all found things and not cutting them up very much. And the tail was the starting point. It was a baseball shin guard, and he ended up with these red boxing gloves for claws and whatnot. But I remember waiting a long time to find those skinny little red legs. And sometimes I gift things to my mother so they stay in the family.
Yeah, there you go. Where do you go to find the stuff that you find? Now, you don't need to reveal any of your like particular locations if it's like a really great spot that you don't want anybody else to, you know.
Flea markets are probably where most stuff comes from, and it's not really a secret. There's a lot of competition for junk these days. The Todd Farm Flea Market in Rowley, Mass. That's a pretty darn good one. There's a great old barn in Liberty, Maine, which is called Liberty Tool. And anybody who's an artist who drives Route 3 through Maine pretty much stops at Liberty Tool. And it's like a 3-story barn full of old tools, and there are bins of knobs and things. But I've been collecting stuff for so long that it's pretty easy to just go shopping in my own studio.
So on my desk right now is a pink bin that they gave Christy at the hospital when she had surgery. It was in case she threw up in the car. And in it, I've got a few notebooks, a sketchbook, a headphone jack adapter, drumsticks, blue triangles cut out of magazines, a sheet of stickers from Sobe. Michael's system is better organized. His materials are, I would say, less stupid, but nevertheless, hearing this made me feel a lot better about the stuff I keep around.
Yeah.
But if there's something I'm short on, it's not beneath me to go on eBay and type in children's vintage bowling pins and get what I need.
Is there any particular object that's like the one that got away, like that you have, but you just for some reason can't figure out how to work it into something? Like a particular bowling pin that's been around for 5 years that hasn't found its way into something yet?
There's definitely stuff that hangs out, but I think what I do differently now is I cut up stuff a lot. So, when I first started doing this, something that was too fancy or had too strong of a personality, it was hard to work with it because I couldn't take it to the next place. And once you start cutting up things and thinking of them as fragments, that's no longer an issue. And now that nothing is, some things felt too precious to cut up, and I don't worry about that so much anymore. It's not that I disrespect the things, it's just that half of something is great. So that if I cut something and I destroy it, something good will probably come out of it just at another time. I had this sign that said, it was like an old vintage motel sign, and it said heated. And it was too long, and I didn't like the word heated, so I cut off the H and I cut off the ED so that I would have eat, because I thought that was a word and a size of an object that I could work with. And then I just couldn't work with it, and I needed a birthday present for a friend who appreciates all this old stuff that I appreciate, and I picked up eat and thought maybe that would be a good thing to give her as a birthday present. And when I flipped it over, because it said heated on both sides and the cut wasn't symmetrical, when I flipped it, the other side said 8. And so this piece of wood that said eat on one side and 8 on the other, because I had cut it, had transformed into something that was better.
Is there a particular woodworking tool that, like, you, once you got it, you were like, how did I ever live without this? Like, for anyone out there who might be interested in working with found objects or other, is there a must-have?
Yeah, it's the Ace Hardware pull saw. I buy them by the dozen. I'm told that those Japanese pull saws might be worth my investment, but I don't know how to sharpen a pull saw. I'm told that they can be sharpened. And I guess maybe it's something to investigate. If you buy a nicer pull saw, does it stay sharp longer? I don't know. I tend to just use them till they get tired and then give them away to friends so they can use them for landscaping. Because tree saws never seem to cut very well. But a pull saw, can, even with missing teeth, can chew through a lilac branch without any problem. So if you look on my pegboard in my studio, there must be at least a dozen of them that are tired saws. If you'd like to go home with one, you're welcome to.
Maybe other people aren't as interested in the little details of this stuff, and if you're not, I'm sorry. I've been working on a house for a year, and as a result, I've come to appreciate little mechanical details. Today, I learned precisely how a check valve works in a sump pump line, and I can't tell you how happy I am to know. Happier than I ever was to know the quadratic equation, or that President Harding's middle name is Gamaliel. And I think it's important to see the small, process-level details in art. Michael's art is wood and paint and glue and pull saws and buckets full of old ping-pong paddles, and his home and his history and his education are all in there too. We happen to have a friend whose job is very much about the process-level details of art. See, Yaara has a pretty cool job at this place called the Magic Gardens in Philadelphia. If you've never heard of the Magic Gardens, well, really, you should just go to some Google image search enabled device and take a look while you listen, but Yaara does a pretty good job explaining it, better than I could.
I would describe the Magic Gardens as a nonprofit visionary art environment, community arts center, and a gallery. And I would describe it as head-to-toe mosaics, labyrinth, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, it's just really hard to describe. I'm, like, looking at a picture of it right now. So the name of the artist is Isaiah Zagar, and the Gardens is his largest public work, and it spans one city block. So it's 3,000 square feet of outside mosaic and inside. So it is like a very large public work.
The funniest thing about like the Magic Gardens, like when we lived in Philadelphia in 2007, we knew that place and loved it. And then later on met you, and you were from Philadelphia, and then you moved back to Philadelphia, and then you started working there, and it was one of those things that like it made the world feel like impossibly small. Like there are only 3 things in the world, because like this could never have worked out so perfectly. But like, so can you... I
didn't know that you guys knew about it before I took you there.
We used to walk by it all the time, and although I don't know that we ever, I think the first time we ever actually went in was when we were with you. Every time we go down to downtown Philadelphia, because we lived in North Philadelphia and not really near it. It was like a 45-minute subway ride to go down there. But it was like every time we would go to like the same Starbucks, and we would like walk by the Magic Gardens, and we'd walk through like the historic district, and we'd go to that frog fountain. Those are like our main haunts.
Piece, like little...
Oh yeah, and the game pieces in front of like City Hall.
What? And all those things that you're saying are like so far apart from each other.
Well, we used to walk a lot.
Yeah.
Do you have like a title at the Magic Gardens, like what your job is?
I'm the preservation assistant.
Okay, so being a preservation assistant, talk about like what that means day to day, because you are like busy keeping that place together.
Yes. So we have a preservation team that's like me and two other people. I mean, it's mostly like me and my manager, but sometimes we have our guy that does like gallery stuff help us with preservation stuff. But basically, we just do kind of like inspect the area like a few times a month, and we do repairs, and I do a lot of like tiling and grouting of like stuff that needs to be repaired, or if there's like a bare area, or if we put up a new wall or something because of like construction in the gardens and we need something to be mosaicked, I do that. And we do like, we clean the artwork because there's like a very specific way to do it in like with like special products that we use that are like environmentally safe and won't damage like a lot of the folk art too much. And what else do? We have like a bunch of preservation projects that we're working on. We sort of recently like finished documenting all of the public works in Philadelphia. And we have over 215-year-olds up on our website on our mural map. And then I'm also doing this project where I'm going around documenting all the folk art in the Magic Garden specifically, or like that's where I'm starting. Because we have all these like specially like made tiles and sculptures and stuff like that all over the gardens. And it's sort of like, I mean, we're not totally sure about this, but it is like seems to be one of like the largest collections of folk art, at least that we know of, that isn't like an actual folk art museum. Although it is like sort of like integrated into the work, so it's not like we can't really like present it in like a museum-y type of way. But
Yeah,
I'm going around like taking pictures and measuring and like building a database of my own of all the folk art, and hopefully that can be like available to the public. But we're not totally sure how that's going to work yet. But yeah.
Do you have to like name each like individual piece? Because I mean, people who are listening to this who haven't seen the Magic Gardens hopefully are already Googling it. But is it kind of like, you know, boobs on a devil head, like near some dice, like, or do the individual sections have names?
I mean, like, they don't have names.
Yeah.
But like I can, like, I've gained enough knowledge of, like, at this point, doing it for a few months, that I can, like, go up to a random, like, statue in the gardens and be like, oh, this is a Josefina Aguilar, or this is a Irma Blanco statue, or this is a Warren Muller plate. Or, like, you know, I can look at something and be like, oh, that's probably Indian, or that's probably Mexican.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know, like, all this random stuff about all the things in the gardens.
I don't think I know any of those names you just said, so that definitely speaks to your, like, specialized knowledge of this.
I mean, I didn't either before I started.
Yeah, and so...
But now I know all these, like, cool folk artists.
Like, what I think was so funny about, like, what you are describing as what you do is that, like, first of all, some of it is, like, it's like the actual physical, like, keeping public art alive because it's public and it's outdoors, so, like, nature is going to destroy it. So it's like being, like,
the architect who keeps rich people's houses from falling into the ocean or something, but for art. But then this database stuff you're talking about too, like suddenly you're also like, you're like in my like realm of like work, you know, but it's about art. So it's so cool. And I just feel like, will you talk a little bit about how you ended up getting this job in the first place?
Well, okay, I love telling the story of how I got this job because it's like the weirdest way that I think I've gotten any job. So I started following Isaiah Zagar, the artist, on Instagram, like, I don't know, like 3 years ago or something. And he, at one point, he was like 2 years ago or something, he followed me back and like started liking a bunch of my pictures. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like, I really admire this artist. And now he's like liking all these random pictures of mine. And then one day he posted a comment on like a selfie of mine that was like kind of weird. And now it makes sense to me because he does talk to text. So like nothing that he says like makes any sense really.
Yeah.
But it was like, it was almost like this little poem. It was like, there's something about this picture. There's something about the eyes and the nose and the face. And you should come to my studio and I want to draw a picture of you. And I was like, okay, this is weird. And normally I like wouldn't just go to like some random old dude's like studio. But I like had been like such a big fan of his work my whole life. And so I was like, yeah, sure. And so he like told me where to go. And I like went to his studio one day, like in the middle of the week in the morning. He like showed me around his studio and we started talking and he was like drawing my face. And I asked him, hey, do you happen to know my mom? She used to have a store on 3rd and South. And he said, yeah, oh my God, I know your parents. I used to like be really good friends with your parents. I visited them in Israel. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I don't remember you at all from my childhood. And like now you're telling me that you like, he was like telling me all these things about my like siblings. And I was like, what are you fucking talking about? And like, he was like, yeah, I didn't realize that the face that I was looking at was the face that I already knew. And then he like was working on like this one like big mural. He asked me to like come help with something with it. So I went and helped him that day. And then he was like, you should come back tomorrow and I can teach you more. And so I just kept coming back every single day. And I ended up like being his assistant for like 6 months. And then, well, I mean, like, he wasn't really paying me a lot of money because he is a struggling artist, sort of. And after a while, he knew that I wanted, like, a real job, but that I, like, really liked doing what I was doing with him. And so he told the people at the Magic Gardens that were looking for, like, a new person for the preservation team that I should join them. So that's basically how I got that job. And he taught me how to, like, mosaic in his style and how to, like, prepare his work and do all that stuff. So, like, I sort of turned into, like, a Isaiah Zagar, like, expert. So, like, I am, like, one of the, like, only, like, a handful of people that can, like, really, like, repair his work to look exactly like his. And, like, it's kind of like a weird privilege to like have him trust me so much.
Yeah.
To like teach me everything about it, basically.
That is a great.
But yeah, I mean,
story.
it's
like, I want to buy the rights to that story to like make a movie out of it. That's how good that story is.
I mean, it was like crazy, and I remember like. I like, this memory resurfaced for me of, like, walking up South Street with my mom and, like, passing this lot with, this, barbed wire fence, and it sort of looked, like, overgrown and, like, insane, but it had, like, all these, like, weird things in it, and I remember, like, my mom going up to the gate and being like, oh, let's go say hi, and it was Isaiah. And now that I look at our pictures on our server at the Gardens of what the Gardens look like in the late 90s, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the thing from my memory. So now it all sort of connects, and it's weird because I barely remember it, but the parts that I do are so vivid, and it's kind of insane to walk around there now and think about that memory.
There's no one on earth who is more fated to have the job that they have. It's it's like being born like John Fisherman and growing up to become the world's best fisherman. That's not even as yes, you were clearly meant to do this.
I don't know. For me, it was also just a really I don't know, sort of, I don't know how to describe it. Sort of an emotionally cleansing experience to have to hang out with this guy every day and have it sort of because I grew up in 2 different countries, and it always my life feels very disjointed at times, and to have this one thing that connects my childhood to my adulthood was mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
It sort of connected all these dots that I couldn't connect beforehand, and it was very I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but it was just a very fulfilling experience.
So this episode is called Process and Inspiration.
Yes.
And I know we've been to a couple of the PMAC faculty jazz nights.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so I know that you do a lot of arranging, and I don't know if you do any other do you do just regular composing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I can conceive of how a person writes a pop song, or something like that. But I was driving over here trying to imagine how a person writes or even arranges a jazz number, and I have I can't even imagine it. So I was just wondering what your process is and how you get started doing that sort of thing.
Well, when doing a jazz arrangement, I have a couple of early decisions that I have to make, which are, do I want to reinvent the piece as something of my own, which I do sometimes, or do I want to try and create something that sounds very true and familiar to the original, even though it's my own original arrangement. And it's interesting, you were at the Bowie Jazz Night last year, I think, correct?
Yeah.
So I did 2 of the arrangements. Actually, I probably did more, but I did at least 2 of the arrangements on that show. One of them was almost a transcription. They had some unique things to it that weren't in the original, but it was off of a jazz album that Bowie did with the Maria Schneider Orchestra, so it was already a jazz piece, which made it possible, although we removed the vocals from it and did it instrumental. So that I stayed fairly true to. So that process is more like really intimately getting to know the music, playing it on my saxophone, sitting down at the piano, playing it at the piano, and listening to the recording. There's no sheet music for this piece that's available to anyone, so I had to listen to the recording and figure out what's happening in the music. What are the chord changes? What's happening where? What are the different lines? What's the different instrumentation? How does that fit the instrumentation I want to work with? What can I substitute for things that I don't have? Or how do I fit in instruments I do have that might not be on the recording? And from there, for a piece like that, I just start at the beginning and work my way through to the end of the piece and write the piece out, almost through compose from beginning to end, because I'm trying to be fairly true to the original. There was another piece on that called The Loneliest Guy, which is a rock tune, and it's a very slow rock ballad that he did on an album. And I decided for that I was going to make that very original, and if I hadn't told you it was a David Bowie piece, you might not know that it was a David Bowie piece. Although if you went and listened to the recording and put them side by side, you could figure out really quickly, oh, that's the same piece. But I wrote it with no drums and no bass and no guitar and no piano and only 5 wind players. and wrote it like a piece of chamber music, almost like a classical piece of chamber music, with all the lines interweaving. And, so it had a clarinet and a bass clarinet and a trombone and a trumpet and an alto saxophone. Those were the instruments in it. And none of those instruments appear on the original recording. And I was pretty happy with the way it came out, but it creates a very different atmosphere. And that piece, I might jump around a lot. I don't go from beginning to end, but I find a moment in the piece where I really want to do something unique, and I work on that, and then I might build my way outward from there in time. So it's not, writing music isn't always about starting at the first beat and ending at the last beat and going linearly through the piece. You can jump around a lot.
And how long? I mean, it was a fairly quick turnaround from even David Bowie passed away in January, and that was like end of February, early March, like March.
It was early March. Yeah, we decided actually the day that the news came out that he had passed away that we were going to do the show that way. I had set a deadline for myself that the second week of January I had to come up with a theme for that year so people could organize their music. And I was, for some reason that year, I was struggling. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? I wanted to do something original, something different. And then Bowie passed, and I have a long history of being a huge fan. I saw him in concert many times and thought, all right, this is why I've been having a problem. The universe was telling me to wait and to do this tribute. So we let the band know, and we divide up the arrangements amongst the whole band, so everyone does different arrangements. So I only had the 2 or 3 arrangements that I had to work on. I think I did an arrangement of Heroes also for it. And some of them are really quick. You do it in a day or two because they're fairly straightforward. Some of them can take, 3 or 4 weeks of working a couple hours a day on it and figuring everything out and getting it just right.
My teaching manual thing that it's kind of a handwritten Xerox machine created stapled handout. I've got a page of quotes, and one of them is from Matisse, the painter, and it is, "Inspiration happens while you're working, so don't wait for it to get started." And I think there's truth to that. That if I haven't been working for a while, it can be scary getting started again. But, sometimes it's just about stay in that room. But, I mean, sometimes it's about staying in the room with consistency. But in terms of getting out, I need to get away from what I'm doing just so that I can try and see it with fresh eyes. And so I believe in taking lots of small breaks. When you come back to something the next day, it always looks different from the way it did the day before. So, could you go out and weed the garden for half an hour and come back and make it feel like a day has gone by so that you're seeing it with fresh eyes again? That's sort of a game that I play with myself when I'm trying to get a lot of work done, is that, and it makes it hard to explain to other people that I'm working, because if I say, leave me alone, I'm working, and then they stop over and catch me weeding the garden, and I try to tell them that I'm doing studio work when I'm weeding the garden, it's a tough sell, but there's truth to it, that trying to just keep seeing it with fresh eyes.
So, okay, definitely you need to find the Matisse clip toward the end of the episode. This is going to be a long episode. So, wrap it up, I guess, with maybe sort of some of the lessons learned about the process and inspiration, sort of as it relates to this podcast. Maybe it's going to be self-explanatory already, and I don't really need to. I don't know, maybe this episode maybe can just end. Today's episode of The Last Podcast featured the voices of CHRISTY LITTLE, Michael Stasiuk, Russ Grazier, and Yaara Ben Dor. It featured music from me and CHRISTY, but much more notably, the PMAC Teen Jazz Ensemble. Special thanks to Russ, Matt Langley, everybody at PMAC for being so welcoming and helpful. Thank you to Michael for welcoming us into his home, and thank you to Yaara for being our friend. Thanks also to everybody who has supported this podcast by, buying records, writing those beautiful reviews on iTunes, and telling your friends and social media followers about this show. It's good to be back. We'll see you next week.